a step ahead. I'll wait. But really, my role has now changed, like Jesse mentioned, and I am now with the Rivers Trust as a project manager for the Water for Tomorrow project, which I'll be introducing today. And CamEO is one of the pilot sites for delivery. Next slide, please. But I would like to start with giving an overview of the water resources challenge in our part of the country, thereby building a case for the Water for Tomorrow project. The east of England is known to be very dry, and it is a water-stressed area. Now, Water Resources East has estimated that on a worst-case scenario, Eastern England faces a water deficit of over 800 million cubic meters in a year. Now, this deficit is shared across sectors, from agriculture to regulators, as well as the environment. And our current operational framework is not sufficient to address this shared deficit. So it is crucial that we amend and improve our water resources planning and management strategies to be able to accommodate this deficit. So although water needed for the environment is dynamic, these environmental needs inform what water is available for the sectors. And so a multi-sector approach to water resources management is vital to achieve a balance and try to build resilience for both the economy and the environment. Now, challenges such as climate change and population growth means that uncertainties in supply of and demand for water will be faced in the future. So this is where the benefit of the Water for Tomorrow project comes in. Next slide, please. So Water for Tomorrow is an EU indirect funded project across France and England, which is looking to provide tools to help deliver a more efficient water resources management at catchment level. This project is working to create and test innovative and holistic water management solutions that will have multiple benefits for the environment, for businesses, and for people. So these new approaches that will be outcomes from the Water for Tomorrow project will be piloted in 2 catchments in France, which is Brittany and Hauts-de-France, and 3 catchments in England, which is the Broadlands, Suffolk, and the CamEO. Next slide, please. So some key information about the project is that it started January of this year and will run to March 2023 at a total budget cost of 4 million euros. Now, the project partners are the Rivers Trust, who is the lead partner, Water Resources East, and Environment Agency. And you can see the logos of the partners at the bottom of the slide. The French partners are BGROM and Cavalier, and collectively, all partners are working towards the same deliverable. So what is the aim? What are we looking to deliver with the project? Next slide, please. Now, Water for Tomorrow will be using or try to develop tools that will use near real-time data to provide deeper insight and visibility of our water systems. Now, these insights will drive and support prompt decision-making for short-term solutions and leading into more informed long-term planning of water resources at catchment level. Now, the delivery strategy for the Water for Tomorrow project is a participatory one with strong stakeholder involvement across all sectors. So the project will also look to ensure we secure the environmental water needs, which is crucial to the availability of water for us all to use. Next slide. So how is Water for Tomorrow looking to deliver its aims and objectives? Well, the project activities will start with information gathering from stakeholders in understanding our current water systems and its vulnerabilities. But it is worth mentioning at this point that stakeholder involvement is consistent and very strong in this project and runs through the whole life of Water for Tomorrow. Now, phase 2 puts into practice the stakeholder understanding and the citizen science information from phase 1 by designing tools and strategies to ensure an improved management of water resources is achieved and also support long-term planning. The third phase will be implementing these new management solutions developed in phase 2 to achieve a dynamic system which responds to near real-time data and addresses the changing needs of the water environment of the catchment area. So this will also help provide more rapid water resources management responses, and which could be in areas of water sharing, proactive drought management, and a whole lot more opportunities. Now, the fourth phase will be to communicate and share these catchment management solutions across France and England. Now, sharing the knowledge of these new solutions will facilitate its scale up and a wider rollout across UK catchments. The aim is also to embed these innovative water resources management strategies developed as part of the project into CABA. So really, the Water for Tomorrow project is a step further to develop our water supply and demand capabilities, and thereby enhancing sustainable water resources management in East of England. I will now hand over to Steve, as that's my last slide, for the Water Resources East perspective of this project. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that, Corey, and excellent introduction to the project. Good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Moncaster. I'm Technical Director for WRE, and I've been involved with the Water for Tomorrow project for a couple of years now, really pulling everything together with Barry and colleagues to get the proposal through the Interreg process, and now finally we're in delivery, so we've got a project to actually get on and build now. Jesse asked me to do a few slides this morning, just for five or so minutes, really just to explain where Water for Tomorrow and the catchment-based initiatives that Corey talked about fit in with regional water resource planning, which is the thing that I'm sort of involved with in my day job. And so that's what I've got, just a few slides that will lead you through that. Could I have the next slide, Jesse, please? Brilliant, thank you. So, the WRE is one of 5 regional water resource planning organisations that have been set up by the Environment Agency, DEFRA, with the help of Ofwat and others, really to work on something called the National Framework for Water Resources. So this was published in, I think, sort of March last year, March 2020. And if you have a look at the side there, in the lettering at the red, there's a link to the website with this stuff on. And if you use the link and go to the government website, what you'll find is a main report on the national framework, which is kind of a mixture of technical work that was done in support of it. And then there's a whole set of appendices which really talk in detail about a number of different issues related to the national framework. And of course, one of them is about regional planning, and that's the white document that's on the slide. So if you look at that material on the website, if you look at the national framework, what you'll see is that we're due to publish a regional water resource management plan for consultation, formal consultation in August next year, August 22. And that plan will be a multi-sector plan, so it'll be about agriculture, the environment, power companies in our case, and water companies. And it'll go from now until 2050, so it's a long-term plan. And it'll account for things like climate change, drought, growth, and the effect of those really on the environment and on water availability. So that comes out for formal consultation in August next year. In January in 22, there'll be a kind of informal consultation on work in progress, and that will be an opportunity to look at where we've got to in terms of looking at the basic planning problem and then starting to select solutions for meeting needs over the future. Within Appendix 2 of the National Framework, what you'll see is reference to what the government expect to be in a regional plan, and what they're written as is a series of must-dos, and then there's a couple of shoulds. So it should do something or should do something else, and then there's some coulds, which are really sort of ambitious and long-term, and speak about the future evolution of regional planning. But if you come back to the must-dos, so the things that we have to do for the plan that we publish in January and August, you'll see that we're expected to take a catchment-based approach. So even though it's a regional plan, we're expected to look into catchments and have something to say about stuff that happens at catchment level. It's expected that what we do is multi-sector, so it involves everybody with an interest in water, not just water companies, which is the way planning's been done up to now. And then another must-do is that we must include enhanced environmental improvements, and that requirement really to set aside more water for the environment is one of the big drivers for us, and one of the reasons really that we think everybody should be collaborating together perhaps a bit more effectively to deliver on environmental need, but also to make sure that access to water can be maintained for public water supply and economic growth and other factors. So that's quite a big driver actually for everything that we do. So that's could I have the next slide, Jesse, please? So that's the regional planning framework. Akura is really giving you a few slides on what we're doing in water for tomorrow. So I thought I'd just pick out the bits of the project that are important to us at WRE. So what we'll be doing is we'll be doing quite a bit of the technical work. We'll be looking at the catchment water resource management plan, and in each of the different catchments where we're working, so East Suffolk, CamEO and Broadlands up in Norfolk, we'll probably use a slightly different approach so that we can test different ways of doing this. But the basic approach is going to be the same in each case. So the first thing to do is to build some sort of model of the system, and although I've put simulator on the slide, a simulator is really a top-end version of that. There are other ways of building models that are a bit cheaper, a bit more cost-effective. But the purpose of the model is really to pull together everybody's understanding of the way the system works. And once you've got that, you can start to include planning-related issues in that understanding. And for us, of course, they're going to include stuff like droughts, climate change, and growth in demand. And once you've got your basic understanding and you've amended that to take account of these things that might happen in the future, really at that point you start to understand what the system vulnerabilities are and what it is in terms of, you know, the planning problem that you're trying to solve. So that kind of progress through getting everybody's understanding together, incorporating it in some kind of model, running the model for future conditions is really the basis for what comes next, which is to kind of develop options for dealing with the issues that you see, and then doing an option appraisal process, which leads you to a point where you have a preferred set of options for the catchment for dealing with current and future issues. And when we look at the sort of stuff that we see in all of these catchments in East Anglia, we think half of the solution set will be new infrastructure, so things that have to be built, reservoirs, pipelines, that kind of stuff. And then we think the other half of it will be related to sharing the resources that are available, and that can either, you know, be sort of formal or informal or involve trading and stuff like that. So basically we're going to do this catchment planning, we're going to end up with a set of infrastructure and then a set of arrangements that link sharing water. And as Akuri was explaining, really when it comes to sharing the water resources, we really need a catchment management system based on near real-time data to help us to do that. And that's going to be the other thing that's delivered from the projects. Okay, next slide, please, Jessie. So this is my last slide, and it's really the question that I was asked when I was putting this stuff together, which is, okay, show us how this all fits together. So if you have a look at the little schematic that I've put up there, you can see that there are basically 4 elements to the national framework. There's the stuff that happens in catchments, which Water for Tomorrow is about. Kind of sub-regional level, there's water company planning, very well established, very technical kind of process. Above that is going to sit the regional plan, which will build heavily on the water company stuff that's happening, but also projects like Water for Tomorrow and some other stuff that we're doing in the region. And then once we've got these 5 regional plans together, they have to be fitted together in a process that will happen towards the end of this year. So it kind of culminates in December with a regional reconciliation. And at that point, you end up with a sort of coherent national strategy and plan. So this stuff does all fit together. I mean, it's kind of nested. It makes sense that you go from small to large. In terms of why you would want to do that, I think it's very sort of important that we understand that at the catchment level, a lot of this stuff's going to be sorted out, particularly in relation to getting that balance between access to water and meeting current and future environmental needs. And if we're successful in Water for Tomorrow operating at catchment level, getting people to share new infrastructure, getting them to share the resources that are available, because we know that varies through time. If we're successful at the catchment level, then the benefits can flow up the chain, and we can drive costs out of water company planning, out of regional planning, and ultimately we end up with national plans that are more cost effective and actually in terms of stuff like climate change, probably more flexible and adaptive and future-proof as well, which again ultimately always comes back to cost and what it costs you to deal with these problems. So the linkage, okay, is a more complete view of the planning problem, so you understand at different scales what's going on, and arising from that you have a wider set of options that probably better value than if you do this stuff separately in silos. The benefits of doing all of that are these environmental enhancements that everybody's looking for, but at the same time you're preserving access to water and you're sort of safeguarding sustainable economic growth, which is the circle we have to square at WRE and other places as well. Great, that's me, Jessie. So I'm ready to finish and hand on to the next speaker.
Thank you, Steve.
Morning, everyone. I'm Dave Johnson. I'm part of the technical team at the Rivers Trust who'll be working on this project. And through the sort of presentations that as part of the presentation we've heard so far, we've been talking all about, they've heard the word catchment-based approach a few times, multi-sector, resilience, sustainability, and critically scaling up. And so this slide is really just about why we're using CABA or catchment-based approach, because it's the main mechanism that we can use to scale up whatever we find in this project to the rest of England. And the kind of the attributes of CABA that are really useful to us are that it covers the whole. We've got partnerships over the whole of England. There's a water resource working group that guides all the catchment based approach partnerships, and any learning that we take from this project can go straight into the working group and then be passed on to other projects. CABA's got a set of data, so the CABA data package, which has all the water resource data in it, and webinars and surgeries which sort of support all the partnerships. And also Water Resources Southeast and Water Resources West are also doing the same thing. They're using the CABA partnerships as their kind of mechanism for getting this part of the planning process sorted. So for all those reasons, it makes sense to use CABA. So I'm just going to go through the technical part of how the system works at the moment, and then hand on to Alison to kind of talk about the change in approach. So the current technical model is Catchment Abstraction Management Strategies, or CAMS. Started 20 years ago, and they were a complete kind of step change in terms of water resource management. They included really important, concepts like ecological flow objectives, so we could see how much available water there was to be abstracted, and this ecological flow objective changed throughout the year and changed according to the type of the stream of the river. So it gave a sort of good picture of how much water was available. There was also the integration of groundwater and surface water. It seems obvious now, but it was a bit of a step change at the time, where we kind of, any water that was taken out of groundwater ultimately comes out of our river flows. So that was another really important kind of change. And then discharges from wastewater treatment plants back into the system, so that we looked at the net gate loss from the system. So all that was actually quite a big step change, and it was all based on the water resources evidence base from the Environment Agency, which was well ahead of its time, to be honest, and was a kind of really excellent kind of evidence base to found all that on. So if we just go on to the next slide, but what we could, what we're hoping to do is move on to a bit more of a kind of a fuller understanding of the system. And there's two key differences between this diagram and the one before. And the first one is that we've included soil and vegetation because it determines the evapotranspiration, which is actually the largest part of the water balance. So, a good idea to incorporate that into the kind of technical evaluation. And once we incorporate that, the thinking is that some of these enhanced environmental improvements that we're looking for can flow from that. So sort of give you a bit of an example. Once you're kind of thinking about the soil and the vegetation, then you can any reduction in peak runoff that you might achieve by improving soil management gives you more water back for the environment or for abstraction. So it's as you incorporate the whole system, you stand a much better chance of getting these kind of enhanced environmental improvements. And it's not really a new idea. In the 1970s, a number of water resource engineers wrote papers about not planting trees in reservoir catchments, and because they were trying to manage the whole kind of system, and that's really what we're trying to kind of include by having a much more holistic kind of approach. So that's one thing, and then the second main change is that rather than just basing it on the EA evidence base, we try and take into account local knowledge about how the natural system works and about how the impacted system works. So you end up with a much more rounded evidence base on which to kind of move forward. So those are just the kind of some of the technical changes that we kind of think we would like to make, but actually there's a whole kind of change in approach, and I'll hand over to Alison for that part of it.
Right, good morning everybody. I'm Alison Ferber, and I'm also part of the technical team at the Rivers Trust that's working on Water for Tomorrow. So just following on from what Dave was saying, there's absolutely no doubt that technical modelling is a really important part of catchment management. But I think it's also important to note that there are limitations to technical modelling. So first of all, water resources management decisions are affected by and impact on a really broad range of systems. And it's quite often the case that the kind of range of processes at play that are relevant to the systems are an awful lot broader than the processes that are actually captured by technical models. So that can mean that really key elements of a system are actually kind of omitted. The other thing is that technical models tend to be built by experts. And so what that means for stakeholders is that the model becomes a kind of black box, and they're really quite separated from the process of designing and building that model. And so this distance between the stakeholders and the model can kind of undermine the confidence in the model and make it really difficult to kind of obtain consensus about the best course of action. So for these reasons, I think it's fair to say that their technical models do have quite limited use when it comes to collaborative decision making. So through Water for Tomorrow, we want to undertake a really participatory modelling approach. And the kind of idea is that this participatory modelling is going to work alongside the technical model. And the difference with participatory modelling is that the emphasis is very much on stakeholder learning and consensus building. So our aspiration for this process is that the process will be simple, inclusive and holistic. So simple in the sense that some of the technical processes and the technical aspects of the systems might be represented in a slightly more simple way. But we're going to really focus on making sure that that process is inclusive. We want to consult really broadly and get as many different opinions as possible to feed into the modelling process, because this is the way that we believe that the resultant model is going to be much more holistic. Next slide, please, Jessie. So if we use the analogy of a jigsaw puzzle, I think the situation that we currently have is that we've got a kind of half-completed jigsaw puzzle. We've got a reasonable understanding of some of those technical aspects of the system, but we really need input from all of you and all of the stakeholders, who know a lot about CamEO, in order to understand what are all of those other important aspects that we need to incorporate into the model. We basically need to identify the missing pieces of the jigsaw and kind of work together to work out how all of those pieces fit together. Each of you has got your own unique perspective and your own knowledge about the system. And the way that we believe that we're going to get a holistic model at the end of all of this is by managing to integrate all of those diverse perspectives together. So if we're successful, this process will complement the technical modelling by, first of all, building a model that includes all of the relevant processes and not just those limited technical ones. It will support stakeholder learning and consensus building. And I think the key kind of take-home message of this is that if we get this process right, we'll be able to develop the shared understanding that's a really essential prerequisite to collaborative decision-making for long-term planning. So I'm going to pass back to Jessie now so that she can get the ball rolling by asking you some questions about the missing pieces of the jigsaw puzzle.
Thank you, Alison and Dave, and to all the speakers. So as CamEO stakeholders, you will all be part of more detailed stakeholder workshops, but we just wanted a chance today at the conference to go through some very initial insight questions with you. Could I ask all of you please to either get out your phone or a tab on your internet on your computer screen and go to www.menti.com. It should take you straight to a page that looks like this, and you can enter this code 91112629, and through this we're able to ask you 3 questions. You can give up to 3 answers for each of the 3 questions, and you have about 2 minutes to answer each one, starting with what are the most important pieces of the puzzle from your perspective for understanding water resources in CamEO. So I'm going to hand over now to Sam, who will show you the Menti screen, but I'll give you one more moment to look at this slide while you enter the website URL and the code. Okay, Sam, do you want to share your screen? Hopefully everyone's been able to get onto that site. And if you press submit with the code, you'll be taken straight to the first question.
I should be sharing now, Jessie.
Yeah, great. I hope everyone can see on the Zoom screen what everyone else is putting in. And as each person adds words in, if there are common words, it increases the size. So you can see climate change, environment, and demand are currently the three highest. I can see, Vince, your message to everyone. You've predicted our next question, so you'll be able to. Sam, we can see your full screen. Is that taking us to the next question?
Let me just. Apologies, this seems to be.
Thank you.
There we go.
That's great. So we'll take away these words and use them to form the planning for our stakeholder engagement CamEO workshops. So I'll ask Sam to move on to our second question. Great. If you could all answer the second question, where is our knowledge weakest in our understanding of the CamEO system? Can start to see words like Cambridge water needs, climate change, development, growth. A few points about future needs seem to be recurring as well. And ephemeral watercourses. That's great, Sam. I think we can move on to our third question now so that we have time for Q&A. So our third question was around what local knowledge do you think is needed to ensure a more holistic approach to water resources management in CamEO? From here, we'd really like you to think broadly and think about what knowledge you or stakeholders you know can contribute to this, which is what we'll really be looking to discuss as well in our stakeholder workshops. Yes, great to see citizen science and real-time data coming up there, which is key goals of our programs. something we'll be looking to do as well is mapping these across different stakeholder groups and ensuring we collect these perspectives and map them across sectors. Right, I think that gives us 7 minutes, Sam, for some Q&A before the break. So if I can ask you to stop sharing, what we'll do is we'll take away those word clouds and piece them together, see what came out the highest and use them to plan our stakeholder workshop. So thank you for that insight from you all here. And I will just introduce Hugh and Harry, our colleagues from the Environment Agency, who have joined us now alongside Steve and our Rivers Trust colleagues who presented, to take some questions. So if everyone could write their questions onto the chat function and press submit, I'll be able to ask them to our panel here today. We also have Barry as well from the Rivers Trust on the call. So any questions, please do put them on the chat. I saw one from Nigel, so I'll read it out. Will the Water for Tomorrow and WRE Phase 2 projects both take on board the Natural England Climate Change Vulnerability Model? And Steve, I can see you've offered to look at the Natural England model, so thanks for that, Nigel. From Lindsay Hargreaves, how do we get involved is the first question. You, Corey, would you like, or Steve, to answer Lindsay's question?
Probably saw the smile on my face there, but that's the kind of question we really want to get. And but there will be more outward facing information in terms of links and active websites on how involvement would be carried out and initiated. But the first point of call would be, please show an indication of interest either here or by sending across to either of us an email, and we will share as part of the meeting outcomes today active email addresses you can send information to, and also expected times when you could get response from such emails. But there is dedicated time to get this delivered and the project has started. So yes, please, a link will be shared after the meeting where we will forward on key information on how to get involved. Thank you.
Great, and a question from Alan Woods, is Water for Tomorrow going to do anything specifically for the catchment in Chalk Aquifer?
Yeah, I mean, what I know is that myself and Alison are working on the Chalk Stream Hub, which is all the information to do with chalk. So it'll certainly be upmost in our mind. So I can't imagine we'll be ignoring it, and we'll want to bring in all that information. We're working with Natural England and various other colleagues on that. So from that point of view, it's a happy coincidence that we're working on both projects at the same time.
Great. Okay, from Robert Stanford, does modelling feedback into county local planning in a timely manner?
I think, Jesse, the plan here is to make all of those links and make them all work, because I mean, ultimately, you know, we're trying to pull different solutions in for solving these problems from different places, and I think a large part of that actually is getting these different planning cycles aligned so that we can pull options out of them at the right time and get them implemented. So you know, there's all the technical work we'll do on one side. On the other, we have to think about how we go and deliver and make these things happen. And I think a lot of that is about getting these organisations lined up in the right way.
Thank you, yes. And from Martin Bose, how do you see the Chalk Stream's ambitions lining up with Water for Tomorrow? So that starts to refer to what Dave was saying about lining up with Cabot Chalk Stream work. But Barry, I don't know if you want to add anything else about Chalk Stream ambitions.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's timely coincidence for the projects that the Chalk Streams ambitions will all be sort of published in time to fit into the project, so that it will fit very squarely in with the project, both in terms of the technical modelling and also the participatory modelling. As stakeholders, if you guys think these things are really important, then they come part of the project. So that's how it's intended to work.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. And from Teresa Mason, how does this all fit with national plans? And how does leaving Europe affect future funding of this work?
I'm happy to answer that in terms of the national plans. I mean, all the words that we've heard today, collaboration, catchment-based approach, and especially, environmental need are fundamental to the Environment Agency's 25-year plan. So, I'm really excited to get involved in working with all stakeholders. That sort of holistic working together is definitely the way we want to go, and perfectly fits with the EA national plan. I probably won't comment on the EU funding, not being close to the Interreg rules, so I'll pass that one on. Thank you.
Thank you, Hugh. And I think the thing to reiterate from Yukori's talk is that we are working with 2 French partners for the next 2 years. We are highly committed to sharing knowledge between regions and very keen to talk to other EU stakeholders. We're not sure what the following 10 years looks like after that, but we definitely don't shy away from partnering with our EU stakeholders and sharing that knowledge. So it's a key part of this programme to reiterate as well. So from Steve Waters, what level of importance is given to leisure use of the water, particularly the popularity of paddle sports? Good question.
I can take that one. I think I'll just reiterate what Barry said before, though, which is that I think that's very much what we'll be asking all of the stakeholders. So it'll be a case of, asking all of you what is important and how relatively important are they, and all the things that you think are important will be reflected in the model.
Yeah, I think so. So I think it's also worth saying that we're on the, by coincidence, we're on the DEFRA Transparency Committee, which is all to do with, actually, it's to do with CSOs, combined sewer overflows, and that type of water quality issue. But as part of that, we've been asked to start collecting sites of high amenity value for bathing water, and so we have actually got a map where we're starting to collect from community groups where those locations are. So again, as Alison says, if it's important, we have a mechanism for collecting and making that knowledge, that local knowledge, transparent about where those sites are and where they're valued.
Thank you. I'll take one final question, and then for the other 3 questions I can see, we will be noting them down and asking project teams to answer them, so your questions will not go amiss. But our final question is, would this new approach on water and use of EFI have legal teeth? So questioning the teeth of the project.
I'll let you have a go at that in a second. I mean, maybe just to throw in my 2 pennies worth to start with. The abstraction plan published by DEFRA and being delivered by the Environment Agency, clearly states its desire to have a stronger catchment focus and implement more local innovative approaches. I think the aim of the project is to develop and demonstrate that these approaches can work. It's then down to the regulator, of course, to implement them into regulation. And I think we can only, hope that happens, that we find the right solutions and then they can be implemented. But the project itself has no statutory teeth. That's down to the regulator. So I'll hand over to Hugh.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Yeah, I mean, as the sort of regulatory role here, we do have that licensing framework, that we won't use the word abide, but we have to follow. But certainly why I'm so excited the project is how you flex around the edges. And as Barry says, you've got to prove that something works to get that legislation changed. So in terms of the question, probably no legal teeth right from the outset, but let's see what we can explore together, because vulnerabilities, and we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, the dry weather impacts on spray irrigators and others, where my team have had to restrict abstractors. We need to find ways to either get ready for that or to mitigate for it. So 100%, let's see what we can do, and then look at the legislation even.
Thank you all. So we'll be noting down some answers to the other questions, and very much appreciate a full team presentation there for Water for Tomorrow. So and thank you for joining, Hugh. So I will let everyone go for your break now, and then we'll reconvene in 8 to 10 minutes time for our next talk. But thank you for the presentations and for the Menti input.